This is a remaster of an old critique with a new script, footage, voiceover, and editing. The original is in the description below for posterity. 1, 2, 3.
You're Spider-Man. You're the amazing Spider-Man. You're the spectacular Spider-Man.
And a few other choice adjectives Jameson uses. Look, that was really brave. But next time, leave the fighting to the pros, okay?
Okay, but what if there aren't any around?
Well, you can't just go swinging at someone twice your size.
Okay, but that's easy for you to say. Sorry, I just can't do what you do.
With great power comes great expectations. At least, that's what Miles Morales thinks. When he beamed onto the page in 2011 with Ultimate Spider-Man, his powers made him panic. He'd spent years watching Peter Parker swing over rooftops and fight bad guys, and he never imagined having the great power or the great responsibility that makes a Spider-Man. There's already a Spider-Man, and he seems to love it, he says in his third issue. I'm not that guy, I want normal. I want to go to school. Despite himself, Miles felt a call to help people after he got his powers, but in Brian Michael Bendis' origin, he was reluctant. It was his best friend Genki who pushed him into using his strength. It was the head of S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick Fury, who gave him his suit. It was May Parker grieving the death of her nephew who gifted him his web shooters. Unlike when the spider bit Pete, Miles didn't throw himself into great power. He had to battle his anxiety and uncertainty, but everyone around him had expectations that he would use his power to become something greater, and those great expectations aren't unique to the comics.
Miles already had the heart of a hero, but I think what we see in this journey is that manifest to him understanding why, right? Him having a feeling like this is something I'm supposed to do, and I know why I'm doing it.
When Insomniac Spider-Man dropped in 2018, it was met with well-deserved praise for how it interpreted the characters, constructed its city, and developed a kinetic tie between the player and the webhead. But it wasn't without its flaws, and those of us who lathered it with praise had great expectations for any follow-up, regardless of the main character. What was marketed as a short palate cleanser to tide us over till Spider-Man 2 ended up being a tightly paced and authentic origin story, with its own sense of style, tone, a revamped combat system, and a New York City with a new coat of paint that makes this my go-to Christmas game. Spider-Man Miles Morales gives us a Miles that's different, while encapsulating the freshness of his 2011 book. Unlike his comic counterpart, he hasn't had to figure everything out on his own. He's had support from a friend and fellow superhero, a mentor who has done this already. But that mentorship brings its own insecurities and expectations. He has to coexist with Peter Parker. They have to share New York. When there's already a Spider-Man, and he's alive and well and doing the job, what does that make you? What's expected of you? This is a commentary and critique of Spider-Man Miles Morales.
Hey, you think you're gonna add that new Spider-Man too?
The kid? Yeah, maybe. Original's just my guy, you know?
Yeah, I know. Hey, is Teo's Bodega around here?
Yeah, bright yellow sign down the block. Can't miss it.
Thanks. Beautiful work, by the way. Maybe leave a little room for the new guy, just in case.
As a point, Miles' opening keeps him firmly in Pete's shadow. A mural of the OG Spider-Man greets us, Harlem's watchful protector, emblazoned in graffiti on the side of a building. There's no hint of Miles yet, an absent space waiting to be filled by the new guy. Harlem as a community is written off Miles Spider-Man as just an add-on, an expansion to Peter Parker. In the words of every contrarian at launch, he's a DLC. He even has to make a similar choice to the one Pete made at the start of his game. It's Christmas Eve. Buy groceries for his mom or swing off on a Spidey mission. His duty as a hero or personal responsibilities, just with much lower stakes. His opening costume is literally the training wheels edition of Peter Parker's costume. He doesn't have the advanced lining that Pete does to keep him warm, so he needs to wear multiple layers. He's wearing trainers so that his toes don't get wet in the snow. The blue parka he's wearing looks like it's puffed up to protect him, and as a reminder for the player that this is a Miles still at the very beginning of his journey, this same blue jacket is the same one he wore when he was depowered, sneaking away from Rhino during the Devil's Breath pandemic. So, what makes Miles Morales different from Peter Parker? If you're directing or writing for the MCU, absolutely nothing it seems. I enjoy those movies as much as the next guy, but Tom Holland's Peter Parker is just a white Miles, down to the team giving him a chubby pal who acts as his guy in the chair. Miles is smart, but not the same kind of smart as Pete. In the comics, he's no super genius. After all, Genki makes his web fluid and he wears Pete's old web shooters. Where Pete is zoned in on biochemistry, Miles' expertise is in the digital world. From a purely scientific standpoint, he'd be more at home in Stark Tower than Pete would ever be. Genki fills that scientist role that Miles neglects. He's smart, but he's an artist first, not a scientist. It keeps him feeling separate from Peter. Insomniac's Miles unfortunately muddies those waters in a way that frankly feels confused. He is a scientist, or was a scientist. He relies on Genki to set up his operating system, he gets his gadgets from friends or Peter, but he also won an Oscorp Science Award and invented some revolutionary energy converter when he was just a tween. It's almost like, in an effort to big Miles up as a Spider-Man equal to Peter, they erase one of the things that make him different. Miles is embedded in a younger generation. He's the digital Spider-Man, not the particle accelerator Spider-Man. Mercifully, that tech side is shown to us through animation and story detail rather than forced minigames. Spidey 1 proved Pete was a scientific genius by making us sit in a different screen and solve science puzzles. Spider-Man Miles Morales proves Miles is a tech head by making him clack a bit on a keypad. Beep boop, characterization established. No minigames necessary.
Circuit AF-15. Kernel panic. Well, let's try a BIOS reset. Nice. That did it.
Identity and heritage matter in a Miles story, whether that's his origins in Brooklyn or his socio-political history as an Afro-Latino boy. In the 2018 comics, when Miles meets Captain America, the two bonded over being from Brooklyn. There's a reason Marvel led with this as his first paperback cover, a black, unmasked Spider-Man smiling at his audience. Turn the page to learn more. The fact Miles is Miles matters. You'll always get freaks that try to remove the name Spider-Man from his identity, but what matters is this is a Miles story and not a Peter story. The man under the mask is always what matters most, because the feeling of their stories are so different. When looking at Insomniac's Miles, that feeling starts with the music. His theme is a young, lighter take on Spider-Man 2018's more orchestral, brassy number. The rhythm and the beat chug along at a more rapid pace, and even the transition to a more grandiose sound has the undercurrent of hip-hop. Adventure awaits, the score says. Rhino's being transported back to the raft.
You here?
Just down in some rocket fuel.
How are you drinking?
Very, very carefully.
It has been over a year since Devil's Breath. Peter's been prepping Miles and training him in the ways of the spider. A solid explanation for how Miles can hold his own against a swarm of prison escapees, but he's not settled into his web shooters yet. Just like Pete in his own story, Miles is going to fail a lot in this game, and we open with failure number 1. The pressure of his first big mission with Pete makes him act without thinking, desperate to prove himself. With just 2 years to cook and a much smaller team, Insomniac faced a challenge when differentiating Miles mechanically from Peter. He should have a uniqueness to him that makes him feel like a different kind of Spider-Man, while harnessing the fact that this Miles is very much unlike his comics counterpart in that he had formal training from the OG Spider-Man. At a GDC talk called Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales: The Creative Journey, the game's creative director, Brian Horton, said, "Our theme was be yourself. To become a hero, Miles must embrace his true identity. Miles wants to be just like his mentor Peter Parker to save his new home, but he needs to embrace his unique power to become his own Spider-Man." Contrast is how Insomniac sets this up. Our opening rumble through Manhattan gives us a Miles that has a lot of the same moves Pete had at the end of Spider-Man 1. He can do tricks immediately rather than unlocking them. He can web up brute enemies rather than needing to level up to it. With the single exception of his dynamic animations, he is a carbon copy of Spidey at the beginning of the story. We see Pete's DNA all over how Miles works on the job, how he and we as the player are engineered into improvising. Miles has learned a lot from his mentor, and we feel that in how similarly he controls at first. But by the end, he has sculpted his own way of doing things, with his own movesets and upgrades. Framing this opening mission with Peter battling Rhino in the background while Miles has to take on henchmen keeps him feeling like a sidekick. Insomniac strongly establishes who Miles is in relation to Peter's presence in this world when it all kicks off. He's the number 2, not his own hero yet, so a journey is paved for us to follow. He even tries to piggyback off Pete's quips, still fanboying even though they share a great power. When Miles literally piggybacks on Rhino, Pete is still present in gameplay, zipping ahead of us to the shopping centre and lifting decorations or saving bystanders so they don't get smushed. The thrill is here, the chaos of a citywide supervillain battle gets us pumped, but it's all funneled through the lens of Miles being a sidekick. Rhino's formal boss fight begins the transition away from that portrayal. It is above and beyond what we would have expected after playing Spider-Man 2018. One of my biggest problems with that game was that the presentation and tone was what made the boss fights memorable, not the battles themselves. Spider-Man Miles Morales has fantastic boss fights. Each one is satisfying, and opening the game with Miles battling Rhino to keep Spider-Man alive is a great way of highlighting how far Miles has come from the days when he was sneaking around a shipyard, hiding from Rhino, wearing the same blue parka, unable to lay a finger on the monstrous Russian. Of course, the webhead can't pierce Rhino's armor with his bare fists. He's strong, but he's not that strong, and we've been squeezed into this tight arena, forcing us to focus our attention on dodging and hand-to-hand combat. Miles unlocks his Venom powers, the game's electrifying way of adding a new twist to his combat, and our first hint that he isn't just a palette swap when it comes to beating up the bad guys. Miles is going to craft his own image and his own style of play. It's an effective tutorial boss, and it's cathartic to watch Miles take down a villain he was once so terrified of, even if it is by the skin of his teeth.
Simon Krieger, head of R&D at Roxxon Energy. Pleasure to meet you.
You too. Sorry. I think our ball landed in your yard.
No, actually did us a favor. We just bought the place. We're planning to tear it down for a build. But looks like you beat us to it. I wanted to thank you.
On the page, Simon Krieger is not a Spider-Man villain. He's an Iron Man one, only appearing in the prequel story Iron Man: The Iron Age. He ordered the assassination of Tony Stark's parents to break him as part of a takeover of Stark Industries. Recriminations aren't a profitable use of our time, he says. Just leave it to me and I'll deliver Stark on a plate. With a blank page of history, Krieger could have evolved into something larger, but Troy Baker's performance elevates simple characterization, making him slimy and entertaining because he's a recognizable archetype, a calculated businessman who hides behind the mask of a company for the people. Krieger is a scumbag tech bro because he's a scumbag tech bro, here to give a face to Roxxon rather than stand as a sincere threat. It's what he represents that matters, the gentrification of Harlem and billionaires that think communities like them are dispensable. Introducing Krieger as praising Miles is a smart way to reinforce his sleaziness. He's the only character so far to look at Miles and not refer to him as a sidekick or as Spider-Man 2.0. He looks at him and treats him like his own unique hero, but that doesn't sit right with us. We just started the game, and aside from one cool punch, Miles has controlled exactly like the Spider-Man we already know. It's too early in the story for someone to look at this guy and consider him a new superhero, paving his own way. But Peter Parker does think that. He cares about Miles, slipping snugly into a brotherly mentor role, but the hierarchy of their relationship is not forgotten.
You gotta take the oath.
Oh. Okay.
I promise to do everything in my power to protect this city.
I promise.
This is a teacher-student conversation, not two close friends. Pete tells Miles that he's not going to be around for a couple of weeks because he's going to Symkaria. Which is weird because I'm pretty sure a year ago Pete and MJ were talking about packing their bags to head off ASAP, but cool, fine, what even are timelines. What this means is Miles will have to be New York's only Spider-Man. The subtitles transition from calling our hero Miles to calling him Spider-Man once Pete passes the responsibility of the city onto his shoulders. Nice touch. Pete's expectations of Miles are laid out clearly, to the point where he makes him take a silly oath. He expects Miles to be the new Peter Parker. He expects him to protect the city no matter the cost, foreshadowing the toll this oath will eventually take on Miles before the story is over. And nothing reinforces that better than the jank spider suit Peter gifts him. Like, it's a cute present and all, and kudos to Pete for thinking of Miles, but it's just one step above the parka and hoodie he was wearing at the beginning. Miles' first suit is a reference to the classic Halloween suit he wore in the comics. It's in Spider-Man's colours, just brighter and more pop-like in their shading, and worst of all, it has knee pads. Bloody knee pads. I take back my previous assessment, this is the training wheel suit. It's exactly what a sidekick to Spider-Man would wear.
I will never get used to you doing that.
Hey, look. Check it. Christmas present from Spider-Man.
Open it.
What separates Miles from Peter? How about his support network? By the time the credits roll, a whole neighborhood will know he is Spider-Man, but even now, right at the start of his career, he has confessed his hero status to his best friend Genki. Where Peter is intensely distrustful, using the mask to protect the ones he loves, Miles is embedded in civilian and superhero communities. In the comics, Nick Fury, Captain America, Spider-Woman, the Prowler, Maria Hill, Genki, MJ, Gwen Stacy, Aunt May, and his mother all learn his secret by issue 20. Here and in the Ultimate Run, Ganke is Miles' guy in the chair. He is our tech guru and our comic relief, and fun fact, he was a character that Phil Lord and Chris Miller originally planned to play a role in Into the Spider-Verse. But after Homecoming came out, they were terrified people would see Ganke as just a ripoff of Ned. This game's greatest gift is ensuring hundreds of thousands of people learned that Ned is just a ripoff of Ganke, seriously. Our best bud ends up playing a similar role to Mary Jane Watson, except without having to play as him, sweet Jesus thank Christ. He researches the bases and hideouts we raid, he provides exposition when we need it, and he gives Miles a kick up the ass at the story's all is lost moment. Having him living with Miles over the Christmas holidays really solidifies the two as brothers rather than friends, and specifically the warmth and Christmassy glow of the Morales household immediately draws you into this family. The charm of Rio cooking up a dinner, Ganke rummaging desperately for bleach after a spill, looking through Jefferson Davis's old records, and choosing one for background music. It all establishes Miles' little unit as a team that we will care about over the course of the game. Rio Morales isn't exactly the Aunt May to Miles' Peter. She keeps a much tighter leash on her boy, underscoring a lot of Miles' tale. She is running as a councilwoman, and one of her rallies will serve as a catalyst for the plot. She's fighting our big bads, Roxxon. The golden warmth of the apartment is perfect for bringing us close to her. While she shares that warmth with her comics variant, there's a specific shift in how Insomniac handles her. For a start, she's alive. Miles is rocked by tragedy twice on the page. He thinks he kills his uncle, and then Rio is shot by a cop when a symbiote attacks. In her dying moments, she sees that Miles is Spider-Man and she begs him not to reveal his identity to his father. In the games, Jefferson never got a chance to learn Miles' secret. It's his death that fuels his heroism. The ghost of his father hangs over the mantelpiece, a daily reminder of the expectations Miles has of himself in the wake of his father's death.
Finn?
Hey, fixed your doorbell.
It's so good to see you.
Finn Mason is a gender-bent rendition of Phineas Mason, aka the Tinkerer. Insomniac have taken a crusty, Weasley old man and turned him into a young girl from Miles' childhood. Their name is the only thing they have in common. In the comics, the Tinkerer was never really a particularly deadly Spider-Man foe, he was just an opportunist. So turning him into a character with some real motivation and a tragic backstory and a direct tie to our hero was a smart way to play around with a new villain without stealing any heavy hitters from Pete's stories. The game really wants to hammer home that Finn is a genius. 10 seconds after fixing a doorbell, she rattles off that she and Miles won the Oscorp award. Rio asks her if she's still in the robotics club and do you get it yet? Do you get it yet? It's pretty ham-fisted. If you'd seen a couple of trailers and had a vague knowledge of who the Tinkerer is, you will call Finn's villainous identity 10 seconds into her introduction. But I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. The game isn't coy about this one, and being blatant about Otto's meltdown worked for Spidey 2018, so why shouldn't it work for Spidey 2020? We're shooting straight from the hip, and that philosophy carries into Miles' presence in Harlem. Really? We now have a half Hispanic, half black, half gay Spider-Man? He looks just like President Obama. This one is half Hispanic, half black. Do I care? Half Hispanic, all Hispanic, half black? I really don't care. Half gay, all gay? I really don't care. I don't care. It's a stupid comic book. However, what I do care about is the fact that I think a lot of this stuff is being done intentionally. It's strange how so much of it seems to all be happening. The friendly Neighbourhood app is one of the key ways that Miles steps out of Peter's shadow. It's Ganke's invention, a means for the people of the city to reach Spider-Man without relying on the cops. It's no accident that it's mainly people of colour who use the app. Miles doesn't run away from the Black Lives Matter movement. After all, Stan Lee said that superhero stories should reflect the world around us, and what would be more relevant to an Afro-Latino teen in America than BLM? From time to time, we receive letters from readers who wonder why there's so much moralizing in our mags, he wrote in Stan's soapbox. They take great pains to point out that comics are supposed to be escapist reading and nothing more. I can't see it that way. At every college campus, there's as much discussion of war and peace, civil rights, and the so-called youth rebellion as there is of our Marvel mags. Sure, our tales can be called escapist, but just because something's for fun doesn't mean we have to blanket our brains while we read it. He said this in 1970, by the way. Idiots are always gonna idiot. A 2020 Miles Morales story that ignores Black Lives Matter would have felt felt hollow, so Insomniac concentrated on the culture that an Afro-Latino Spider-Man would embrace. BLM graffiti pops up. Miles doesn't exactly have the best relationship with the police, they constantly tell him to get to fuck. And it is certainly no accident that as a reward for completing all of the friendly neighborhood quests, we get a badass black and gold suit underneath a Black Lives Matter mural. Miles works away from the police as a bit of a point. Jefferson Davis was the link that connected the Morales family with the NYPD, and when he died, that link shattered. The side mission, Local Biz, has us go invisible to look at evidence without being caught by them. Their presence is mysteriously absent at Rio's campaign rally. None of the side quests revolve around them, and thankfully, there's no megacorp radio towers here to set up a Big Brother system. This is what happens when a team listens to feedback and contextualizes that feedback through characterization. It also connects us to the comics, as so much does. Miles has run-ins with the NYPD daily during his Ultimate run, despite saving Captain America when he's president. And it's an open secret among the Force that Black Suit Spider-Man is a person of color. One person in Miles' circle specifically isn't interested in getting help from the police, so it's no surprise when Uncle Aaron Davis pops up as our first friendly neighborhood mission.
Where's the other Spider-Man?
Oh, he's on vacation. But don't worry, I got this.
One of the first questions Aaron asks Miles is, where's the other Spider-Man? Miles is helping out a citizen and already they want to know where the real Spider-Man is, the true Spider-Man. We're still early in the game. Miles hasn't earned the trust of the people yet, so he's constantly being reminded of that fact. People don't care about the sidekick. Despite the fact he's put down the gauntlets, Aaron is still savvy enough to immediately figure out that this is Miles. He's the Prowler, and very different from what the comics give us. Comic book Aaron is the worst, at least in the Ultimate run. His form looms large over Miles' origin story because when the spider bites him, the Prowler is still active. He figures out Miles is Spidey, blackmails him into becoming his own personal sidekick, and when Miles refuses, Aaron tries to kill him. This is not the gentle uncle from the Spider-Verse movies. Aaron is a substantial threat that's quick to anger and easily crosses a line. In the chaos and confusion of their battle, Aaron dies. Miles worries that the darkness in his uncle is somehow genetic, that it's carried on to him. And just to twist the knife because he's a petty, spiteful prick, he uses his last words to tell Miles, "You're just like me." Insomniac wisely moved away from this scumbag and presents us with a man coloured by greys. Now he works for the subway system. In the underground, the Tinkerer's goons have been messing with some of the docking yards. The introduction is heartbreaking in its mundanity. A Prowler who retired after his brother's death, working for the subway service to get back in the family's good graces. A Prowler who can't go and kick ass in his suit anymore. Some goons messing with him is something he's got to leave to the cops. Thankfully, the friendly Neighbourhood app is here to put Spidey on speed dial. Genki adds this to Miles' operating system, and not only does it keep Miles' relationship with the city fresh and different to Peter's, but it also acts as a solid way to keep track of active crimes and side missions. A brief swipe on your touchpad brings it up like a phone on the bottom right of the screen, where we can track our progress in active crimes and side quests, segmenting our activities. My greatest criticism of the active crimes in the first game was that almost all of them boiled down to fighting contextless goons. Unfortunately, very little has changed here. But very little doesn't mean nothing, so let's look at Crime 2.0. Let me toss out an idea, and you can tell me if it sounds cool or stupid in the comments, I'm sure you will. What if we were punished for not doing crimes? Nothing egregious, but what if the player lost some experience points if they entered the vicinity of a crime but chose to swing past it? I'm not talking thousands or even hundreds of XP, but what if we pass an alleyway where a mugging was taking place, and if Miles decided he wasn't in a punching mood, we lost, say, 20 XP. Feeling like Spider-Man isn't just about feeling the wind in our mask, it's about the responsibilities that symbol encapsulates. What if the game discouraged us from whipping by a car chase and on to the next mission? A notification that someone died or got hospitalized might be a bit too grisly for Insomniac's tone, but a little knock against our progress bar might be enough. The game brings 3 new crimes for us. The rest are copy-pasted from Spider-Man 2018. Feast trucks sit in alleyways, open targets for rampaging thugs, so we need to hold off waves of them so they don't steal supplies. Out-of-control choppers get hijacked by the underground, so we need to zip off to take out some nearby relays. Hacked billboards crackle and fizz, meaning we need to follow a signal to take out some nearby relays. Those two later crimes share similarities, but there's enough variance so it keeps the underground present as a threat, even when we're just swinging about. There's a hint of emergent play here because some street crimes can now evolve into a car chase as a rule, but it's hard to complete bonus objectives like do not allow any vehicles to be stolen when you can't hit a guy once he opens a door. We are still watching shootouts where NPCs have no impact on enemies. We are still interrupting supposed muggings on top of skyscrapers where there doesn't seem to be a mug-e. Seriously, what have these men done to deserve a beatdown? We are still landing on a car, pushing square, and pushing square again. And while Miles has a sick new animation where he rips off a car door and uses it to skid along behind a getaway driver, after stopping my 5th drug deal, I want to know where the burning buildings are. Well, they're in the app, stupid.
Gotta run. Hope it turned out okay.
Each of these side quests are essentially more contextualized crimes or requests from people, but there is specificity to them that makes them feel special. Tracking a guy's cat across the city, pulling a feast truck out of the snow just to race after it because the guy leaves his order list behind. One involves a girl who just wants a selfie with Spider-Man, but while we're there, a building nearby erupts into flames and we need to put out the fire. Another focuses on Howard's pigeons, a neat reference to Spider-Man 2018 where we need to chase down 3 birds while a holographic Peter Parker tells us silly pigeon facts, and to top it all off, this ends with us preventing a break-in at the Daily Bugle. Each of the districts is a friendly neighbourhood crime for us to solve, and engaging with this side content actually strengthens your impressions of the game by the end, when some of the people we've helped see our face, but swear to keep Miles' secret. This moment would have been dramatically weakened if we hadn't engaged with the app. Now, Spidey 1 had missions like these too, and they rocked there as well, but context is everything. Genki wonders aloud if maybe they could monetize the app, put some adverts in, and Miles swiftly shuts that idea down. Friendly Neighbourhood is there for help, not profit, and hearing New Yorkers say they'll recommend the app and spread the word afterwards reinforces Miles' fledgling position as New York's latest hero, finding his place in a city with Avengers Tower in it. The app's missions are low stakes, putting the neighborhood in friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. But when Miles finally gets his head out of his phone, another kind of side quest sets off his Spidey sense. Remember the Tombstone missions? Remember how it introduced a new enemy faction, enemy type, and to top it all off, a damn fun boss fight against one of Spider-Man's famous rogues? Well, what if we did that again, except with no new enemy faction, enemy type, or boss fight? To be frank and not be Monty, this is one of the biggest fumbles in the game. Miles follows a set of quests where we help some of the local shop owners in the Feast Center in Harlem reclaim their businesses from a mysterious, organized threat. It all begins with a cat.
Bunch of jerks broke in here and robbed my place. Think they took Spider-Man too.
A cat called Spider-Man. The idea of taking a simple missing cat mission and winding it up to be some grand conspiracy is intriguing. Miles and Genki essentially have to solve the mystery of which of Peter Parker's famous villains these goons are working for, trying to undermine the real estate of Harlem. What a smart way of introducing a new villain to us without needing them to tie to the Roxxon storyline. I wonder who it is. Sandman maybe? Kangaroo as a nod to Miles' battle with him in the comics? Nope. It's Kingpin, and you don't even get a boss fight with the guy because he's still locked away in the raft. I'm not quite sure what happened here, or why Insomniac thought framing all of this as a complex mystery was the way to go. No player would be satisfied with a full thread of missions, building a grand conspiracy around who the shadowy villain might be, just to make it someone we already know, have battled in the past, and doesn't even have a Z-lister on his payroll for Miles to smack around a bit. The through line of Miles helping the people of Harlem, helped by shopkeepers, or graffiti artist Haley, ties a neat bow around his status as the neighborhood Spider-Man to Peter's big picture Spider-Man. But structurally, it's a disappointment and doesn't hold a candle to Tombstone's whirling short mission chain. Regardless of the lack of baddie or boss, I would argue that trying to complete the story without finishing this quest or the app missions would be a desperate mistake. Although making it optional content keeps the player choice front and center, bringing into this game one of the greatest strengths of its predecessor.
Now, what are you gonna put inside this bad boy?
Secret time capsule. Only Miles and I know.
Boom! That's right. Keep it secret, keep it safe.
Hey, Rick. You gonna take that job at Roxxon or what?
Why? You gonna take it if I don't?
Maybe. Waiting to see the offer.
There are parallel beats in Miles' story and Peter's. The betrayal of a friend, a forceful conglomerate acting as the inciting incident, an attack at a political rally, a deep, cutting loss. But in this game, it rumbles along with a sense of youth. The trinkets and the apps and the mum that makes Christmas dinner are just one part. The other is in how Miles and Finn are characterized in the scene work. Finn might carry herself with confidence, but she, like Miles, is just a kid. She summons Miles to a rooftop all for the sake of remembering time capsules they created when they were younger. The nickname she gives him, Molasses, sounds like a toddler trying to learn his name for the first time. She worships her big brother, Rick Mason, and the game reminds us that first and foremost, she is someone's little sister. It's the trodden ground her characterization springs from, and the seed of her ruthless crusade.
Hey, I feel like we both have stuff we're not sharing.
To the backdrop of an old friendship, her goons are preparing for a fight. So, let's punch some guys. Dear Marvel, I am wholeheartedly against the decision to replace Ultimate Peter Parker with an African-American Hispanic person. I am extremely disappointed and offended that you killed off one of your greatest characters of all time for the sole reason of diversity. It not only pushes many readers away, but is a complete insult to the character Ultimate Peter Parker himself. You had so many characters to choose from, and there's absolutely no justification for this drastic change. I will definitely not keep reading Ultimate Spider-Man and feel that I wasted my hard-earned money. Your valued reader, Jimmy Champagne. The evening of Christmas Day greets us with a Christmas market. The crux of Rio Morales' campaign is uniting Harlem as a community, fighting for the little man, so stalls rise up out of the snow, operated by small business and charity centers like Feast. Harlem's people, many of which we've helped through our super app, dance, sing, and say hello. Teo, the cat owner, has set up shop. Gloria, the homeless woman that Pete saved in his campaign, has firmly settled at the feast stand. Deaf artist Haley coats the brickwork with colour. Miles is everyone's hero, so he can speak ASL, a natural piece of characterization because Miles is a smart guy who speaks Spanish already. At school, he'd need to take an elective in another language, so he chose sign. The guitars strum, the radios crackle, dancers dance, and Roxxon security watches suspiciously from the side. This isn't just a rally, it's a protest. Roxxon's new form energy is untested, deregulated, and rumour has it that it's dangerous. Rio prepares her speech, and then echoing Jefferson's death a year ago, everything changes with an explosion.
This message is for Roxxon. The man you answer to, Simon Krieger, is a killer. This plaza is a monument to everything he's done. I won't let it open. The underground will stop it.
The Underground have attacked. Time to kick some anarchist ass. On Kinda Funny Spoilercast, Brian Horton said, "Combat was our #1 pillar in our creative vision. Day one we asked what made Miles unique from Peter Parker, and we started with the bioelectric punch. That was the foundation of everything." By the way, developer-led spoilercasts rock. Kinda Funny are doing God's work here. Miles is less reactive than Peter, a crowd control combatant that brings more options for crowd control. All of his venom attacks are smartly mapped to the L1 button, making them simple to use, but offering a variety of options. Punch, tackle, ground slam, enemy launch, and towards the end of the game, the gorgeous blast attack which cleans out any enemies in the near vicinity. The Venom power set means Miles' combat style could be more wild, introducing more area of effect attacks, something which was distinctly lacking in the original game. This is true of his comics run as well. On a battlefield, Miles is chaos incarnate. It's frankly a miracle he hasn't died yet. He resents his spider sense because it distracts him when he's trying to focus. "I already know I'm in danger," he says. "I don't need some buzzing to tell me." The Venom attacks are perfectly designed to make Miles feel as reckless as we would expect him to be so early in his superheroing career, with particle effects that are a cool as hell way to separate the aesthetic of Miles' game from Peter's. Miles has new animations, his swings are clumsier. There are opportunities for planning ahead here, but the Venom moveset makes Miles much more improvisational than Pete was. As a result, the game reduces the number of gadgets at our disposal. Where previously gadgets and environmental attacks would be our way of taking down the game's more powerful enemies, now it's all about the Venom attacks, baby. Venom essentially works the same way Focus did in the previous game. We charge it up through attacking and dodging, and ultimately can use this to heal if we need a quick refresher, or fancy a finisher. But the true joy is in saving it up to use one of our powerful Venom attacks. According to lead VFX artist Brianna Lindsay, all of these powers and animations, right down to the finishers, can have their origins traced back to the comics. Ground slams are only available as a Venom move, so as an area of effect attack it can serve a severe payoff, with all the sparkling visual effects you could ask for to add to the chaos. Venom Jump throws enemies into the air, temporarily neutralizing them as a threat and increasing our damage because they're shocked. Venom Punches throw enemies back, so it's not just traversal that has frenetic momentum, it's battles too. We're forced to launch around a space quick fast because a Venom Punch or Venom Throw almost always requires a follow-up whack. The only problem with this is how the powers are eked out over the course of the campaign. By the time I got the Mega Venom Blast, it felt like there wasn't really enough time to enjoy it, but then again, it's overpowered as hell, so perhaps that's for the best. Restricting Miles' use of gadgets is smart. He only has 4, including his standard web shooters. We have holographic decoys, the gravity well, and the remote mine. Where before our core strategy would involve webbing enemies to nearby surfaces, Miles is more concerned with giving goons a concussion or frying them alive. That combat focus provides subtext. Miles is new on the job. He's still feeling the pain of his father's death, something Spider-Man 2 will beautifully capitalize on. So there is rage in every punch, even if it bubbles with awkward quips and teenage anxiety. Environments explode and thrash in the midst of battle, glass that shatters, pillars that fall. In the first hour of the game, Miles intercepts the underground at Roxxon Plaza and melts them before they can do any damage. The battle isn't just in a widespread outside location like before, it takes us crashing into office buildings and through laboratories organically, without cutscenes to segment these sequences off. The destructible Miles comes through when combat lets us explode with bioelectricity and trash a space. When the bodies lie crumpled and the battle ends, we were able to drink in his strength and ferocity. While Miles can still web up a bad guy and swing him into a nearby wall, the likes of the impact web, trip web, and web bombs have all been scrapped in favor of the gravity well, which sucks enemies together, leaving them vulnerable to a Venom attack. You're expected to use the gadgets in tandem with the Venom power set, and if it was a competition, which, it isn't, but if it was, Miles Morales would take a point over Spider-Man 1 here. The gadgets are generally complemented by Miles' other abilities, rather than being amusing extra steps in a particular strategy. Well, except for the decoys. The decoys are dumb, chirruping, inoffensive fun that somehow are not mechanically lackluster. Somehow, Miles can generate holograms that don't just distract enemies, but do damage. How do they do this? How has AR technology manifested in the real world? Good question, it's never explained. The decoys don't bring a new element of strategy, they just do the fighting for us. It acts the same way the Spider Drone did in Spider-Man 1, except the difference there was Spider Drone couldn't KO anybody, it just stunned them. The distraction is useful, especially in the later game with more difficult hordes that require complex workarounds, but I'm firmly of the belief that they shouldn't do any damage. They make up 25% of our meager new gadgets. The argument could be made that the decoys aren't supposed to be used in combat, they're supposed to be used for stealth, but they downright impede the stealth system, so I ended up refusing to use them. 2 new enemy factions have taken to the streets to cause trouble: Roxxon Security and the Underground. Roxxon is very similar to the Sable Militia from the previous game, just with some further refinement. The bulky geometric armor is here, the thick plating and weaponry returns, but thankfully there are no jetpack enemies. No sir, the Roxxon security forces are grounded, where the Underground is sprightly and nimble. The Underground especially forces an awareness of your surroundings because they leap about the map. While both have an aesthetic tie through the neon color scheme and their use of tech, their presence is defined by juxtaposition. Anarchism versus corporate fascism. Well, that's not strictly true, is it? Especially of the Underground. We pick up through incidental dialogue that they're not anarchists, not really, and they don't believe in Finn's cause of taking down Roxxon. They are thugs and ex-cons, a ramshackle gang given purpose by the Tinkerer's toys. A useful tool, but that doesn't make them any less dangerous. As far as individual enemy types go, this time around we have 9. Standard henchmen, gun enemies, rocket launcher enemies, stun baton enemies, brutes, jumpers, sword guys, Eyes, shield enemies, and juggernauts. For some inexplicable reason, Insomniac seem to have purposely sliced out the whip enemies, jetpack enemies, and minigun enemies that were introduced in the 2018 game in its DLC. And I honestly don't know why. Refining disabled jetpackers would have kept aerial combat a necessity in Miles' rendition, and it seems really bizarre that the Kingpin thugs or raft prisoners don't still have the whip and minigun types so that their respective factions bring something special to combat. Now don't get me wrong, I really enjoy what we currently have, but it just seems like a weird omission. Each of the special enemy types do feel a little more special this time. Previously, Sable Shield enemies and the Demon Shield enemies felt like reskinned versions of each other, but in Miles' New York, each faction has enemy types unique to them. This meant that some of the toughest battles in the game were active crimes where Roxxon and the Underground were having a shootout and we'd have to contend with both of them at once. On the Braithwaite Bridge, our two factions go to war.
What the hell are you doing?
Despite the fact Spider-Man Miles Morales is shorter than Spider-Man 2018, its pacing is much tighter. There are still some issues. I would argue that it's just too short and a couple of the later developments needed more time to cook, but the Finn Tinkerer reveal is straight to the point. It unites the duality of Miles and Spider-Man much earlier in his story than Insomniac did with Peter's. Both the Man and the Mask need to reconcile with this over the next 6 hours. The shock of this reveal, with Miles still reeling from the implications, leads to his second failure of the game. Part of being Spider-Man is learning how to fail. Every major Spidey story revolves around a major failure, and Miles is no different, on the page and on the console. When he battled Hydra in the Ultimate Universe, he threw caution to the winds and fought Giant Woman, just for the two of them to end up miles away from the battle, a Giant Woman ripping off his mask. Miles fails a few times in this game, just like Pete did in his. Christ, in one of the side missions he messes up breaking some icicles and nearly derails a train. Here, on the Braithwaite Bridge, he loses control of his bioelectricity and blows it up, leading into a fast-paced, web-swinging, people-saving section where Miles desperately races around pulling people from wreckage. The organic way we transition from freely swinging around to button mashing to going back to swinging without any signposting keeps this section feeling fluid rather than forced.
I did this. My powers. I made it explode.
Until now, Miles hasn't had to battle Roxxon's security. He saved people, he fought off the Underground, so why are they pointing their guns at him? Firsthand, his preconceived notions of what being Spider-Man means are dismantled. Branded an enemy by people he thought might be allies, a colossal failure with his bioelectricity. His best friend is a bad guy, and to top it all off, here he is about to be shot, just to be saved by the New Yorkers distracting the guards long enough to tap into his invisibility and escape. It's harrowing. He's just a kid. Being New York's Spider-Man isn't just about saving cats. Through all of this, a clear pang of PTSD as the night comes to a close. He's still dealing with the trauma of Jeff's death. Watching a terrorist attack at another public event linked to New York's political scene would inevitably bring back flashes from Miles' past.
I thought you'd quit after last night.
Why would I quit? I said I'd fight for my home. I meant it.
Rio handles her grief through a project, her campaign against Roxxon. Miles fully expects her to give it all up after coming so close to being hurt, but she doesn't. This, what happened tonight, it's just proven her point. She's more determined than ever to shut Roxxon down. It's where that tight pacing feels a little rushed. There's potential for strong conflict between Rio and Miles here, similar to that of MJ and Pete in the previous game, but Miles just waves it away.
Dulce de Coco would be great.
It's a real shame because it's a missed opportunity for Rio and Miles to explore their grief together. Thankfully, Genki sees a way forward. To Spidey office. What the hell did you guys do to Spider-Man? Who's coming up with these ideas and storylines? Really? You have successfully pushed me over to DC full-time. I grew thoroughly enjoying the great Marvel comics, but now, I don't know, things are not balanced in the universe, Marvel or otherwise. Unless Peter Parker comes back in the old red and blue, I will never ever touch another Marvel comic. A formerly happy Marvel true believer, Douglas Maxfield.
When I got powers, and I thought I'll be able to fix anything. Do anything that Spider-Man does.
Whenever you say Spider-Man, you always mean the other one. You're Spider-Man. You can fix this. Your way.
Before the Adidas suit burned out our eyes, Miles' wardrobe set him apart from Pete as the stylish Spider-Man. We get 18 suits to choose from, 12 of which are gorgeously designed in a look befitting of New York's latest Spidey. No, not you, Strike Suit, you suck. To bounce back from the Braithwaite Bridge disaster, Miles and Genki start doing things their way, playing with color schemes, tossing around designs until finally settling on the famous comic book design, Insomniac Edition. Miles transforms Pete's crap training wheel suit into a sleek black number, and the way music is used with Lecrae's This Is My Time, written exclusively for this game, brings the Miles of our mind's eye to our consoles at last. In The Art of Spider-Man Miles Morales, Oscar Gonzalez said, "The pressure of designing Miles isn't something I often think about. It just hits me every now and again. It's a big deal because this is the first time Miles has appeared in a game as the main character. That pressure even gets to Miles while he whips up his new suit. He tries to drink a coffee upside down and it goes hilariously horribly wrong. Such a tiny dimension to the scene, played off as a laugh, actually has a deeper tie to how Miles compares himself to Pete. Here, Miles realizes that it is literally impossible to drink coffee upside down. He tries to emulate Peter Parker and realizes that a lot of what he believes Pete to be, this superhuman who has his shit together, is likely a load of rubbish. It's Pete's way of projecting outwards to the world, his Spider-Man cockiness, his confidence. Miles tries to be all of that, just to have his illusion shattered, realizing that this is all okay. It's okay to screw up, it's okay to have flaws, it's okay to not be able to drink coffee upside down. That's all solidified when Pete calls Miles from Symkaria and offers to come back and help out, but no, Miles has got this. We got a new suit, a new level of confidence, and we're going to enter Act 2 ready to kick some butt. So, let's talk about the suits. Accreditation is still missing. I ranted enough about it in the Spider-Man 1 video and nobody wants to hear that all over again, so let's just say that I'm not mad Insomniac, I'm just disappointed. If the artists that inspired these suits aren't accredited in Spider-Man 2, that's when I'm gonna get mad. Well, would you look at that? I want to start by running down my top 5 favorites. It was fun in my Spider-Man 1 video, so I'm sure it will be fun here. Number 5, the Bodega Cat Suit. A lot of Miles' suits go back to the community he builds through his heroism. The snug hat and scarf that Haley gives him. The Uptown Pride suit is a gift after the friendly neighborhood quests. But the Bodega suit brings everything full circle. Spider-Man and Spider-Man off on an adventure together, loose and cozy while accompanied by a brand new finisher. Studio art director Gavin Golden flagged that it immortalizes Insomniac's approach to collaboration. In his 2021 GDC talk, he said, "Our animators really pushed using the cat in a custom combat finisher, eventually bringing all of those pieces together to make a very memorable suit. While it may just seem like another suit, this symbolized the team spirit we have at Insomniac, and serves as a great example of our collaborative nature." Number 4, the Spider-Verse suit. If Miles Morales was in, say, Marvel's Avengers, you know and I know that the Spider-Verse suit would have been held hostage as a pre-order or locked behind a paywall. It is a fantastic piece of fan service to get players the famous suit from Miles' most famous storyline, and the suit mod which comes with it removes a few frames so that it embodies that particular animation style. It's wonderful, and you can pull the mod out of the Spider-Verse suit and plant it onto any of the other outfits so they too can look like they've been pulled from the films. At the risk of praising the movie more than the game, I love the graffitied spider. Messy, stylish, and 100% Miles. And the blue shading to his black contrasts really nicely with New York's winter wonderland. Number 3, the classic suit. The saying goes that you can't beat the classics, and while I don't think that's strictly true in this game, we'll get to the really cool stuff shortly, the standard black and red variant distinguishes Miles from Pete when they're on screen together and adds a level of edge. Sarah Pichelli sketched this out for the comics, and Insomniac have approached it with an if it ain't broke, don't fix it mentality. If the overemphasis on line work appeared in the comics, I would criticize it, but just like with Pete's suits in his game, a 3D space means they can add texture. Number 2, the 2020 suit. This comes from Raza Murdoch, part of a full-blown reimagining of Marvel characters with updated looks to promote the Iron Man 2020 comic. Great comic, hideous suit, but we're talking about Spider-Man. Oh look, Pete's 2020 variant sucks too. The badass bomber jacket with the LED helmet and chest looks awesome. I love that it bulks up Miles' upper body while keeping his skinny little chicken legs on show. And the helmet changes so that Miles is still expressive during pivotal story beats. Number 1, the tracksuit. Cutting past the punny name, it stands for Time Response Activated Circuit Kinetic Suit, specifically designed by Javier Garon for this game. It's something quite common for a lot of Miles' looks here. He doesn't have as much of a storied history as Pete does, so things like the vibranium suit, or whatever the hell the 10th anniversary suit is supposed to be, aren't here because they didn't exist in 2020. That meant Insomniac had to rely on brand new looks, so there was still choice and variety to choose from. The tracksuit is my favourite because the white connects Miles to Pete, making him New York's other Spider-Man. While I think it was smart to not make this his standard look because the white doesn't differentiate him enough and it might come off like a uniform when the two are together, I still really love it in a vacuum. This doesn't have anything to do with anything, but if the Brooklyn Vision suit lost the backpack, it'd probably slide into this list somewhere. I love this look, even if it makes it a little easy to identify Miles. The dimension and detail on show across all of our suits is as deep as it was in the first game, more so when it comes to stuff like the 2020 suit. Each one carries new animations in the form of its finishers, and each suit degrades in its own individual way over time, gets dirty or rips depending on the outcome of certain missions. However, it's a 2 steps forward, 1 step back situation. As cool and charming as all of these suits are, Insomniac have also completely scrapped the cutesy suit abilities that the previous game wrapped. It's a shame and makes each suit feel a tad less special as a result. I understand that perhaps the team heard our general criticisms that each suit power was ultimately kind of useless when compared to the web blossom, but still, I missed these. They were part of the excitement when unlocking a new outfit. Instead, they've been replaced with specialized suit mods. For example, Power Pitcher, which lets throwable objects deal more damage. That's still useful, but it lacks the wow factor you might have hoped for, and that's not where my issues with unlockables end.
I won't let tonight be for nothing. I promise, Rick.
They were trying to shut the New Form project down. But something went wrong.
Spider-Man's first stop is to track down Finn. Maybe her workshop has answers. This is a villain room done right. I took umbrage with how these were handled in the previous game because we just walk around bases and listen to tape recorders where the villains monologue their motivations to us. Finding video recordings instead isn't that much more interesting, but hey, it's an improvement, so credit where credit's due. Finn's brother Rick was working for Roxxon and had discovered that their new form energy reactor was making people sick. Rick himself appears to be dying, so he and Finn plan to break into Roxxon and shut down the reactor. Miles swings off to a nearby Roxxon plantation with the intention of investigating further. Security has it on lockdown and there's a tough fight ahead. Good thing we leveled up recently. Spider-Man Miles Morales takes one of my favorite game mechanics from the original, the currency system, and pours gallons and gallons of water into it so that it's diluted to the point of being almost unrecognizable. No longer do we have collectible tokens, base tokens, crime tokens, and so on. This wide variety of currencies incentivizing us to engage with individual activities in an effort to purchase contextualized suits and upgrades has been reduced to just 2: challenge tokens and technology tokens. I hate this. It removes complexity from the upgrade system. I was drowning in tokens long before I entered the endgame as a result of this. Rather than assessing my suits and upgrades and thinking, okay, I just need to collect one more backpack and then I can unlock that new suit, I'll do that before the next story mission, I'm just faced with level gating instead. Generally, gear upgrades, mods and suits are locked away behind levels instead of being currency requirements. Or worse yet, locked behind New Game Plus. Each of our gadgets have 4 upgrades available, but we have to wait until New Game Plus if we want to unlock the 4th upgrade on all of them, meaning that we don't finish Miles' story with a fully powered Spider-Man, we finish it with a 75% there Spider-Man, despite 100%ing the game and having loads of tokens spilling out of my pockets. The same goes for some suit and visor mods. Even the Brooklyn Vision's training suit that we saw in the City That Never Sleeps DLC is just sitting there, silhouetted, mocking us. It's not even a particularly good suit to hide. The suits, the upgrades, and the mods aren't the only victims of this either. Even the skill tree suffers as a result. Miles completely scraps the web-swinging branch of the skill tree. Instead, we have combat, venom powers, and stealth. But the final skill of each of these branches is locked away until you start up New Game Plus. Why? That's not really an incentive for rebooting the game, it's a frustrating limitation in your primary playthrough. Stop telling me I have unspent skill points, you won't let me spend them! Experience points still feel a little bizarre and random in how they're allocated. Story missions still give us way too much XP, while side missions give us far too little. For something as simple as popping by Miles' apartment for Christmas dinner, we get like 1000 XP, and then for completing all of Pete's challenges we get like 500 XP. By the time I finished the game, I had been level 20 for for a good while. We're talking 3 campaign missions, but the game refused to level me up to level 21 until I jumped into a second playthrough. Whether it was a bug or not, it's an obvious pullback of the curtain, shattering the illusion that I have complete control over building my Spider-Man.
Damn, Miles. For a skinny-ass kid, you hit hard.
Uncle Aaron? You're the Prowler? My dad had a foul on you.
I know. And I bet you got a lot of questions right now. But we need to get out of here. You picked the wrong place to break into.
The pacing of gear and upgrades might feel messy, but that's definitely not true of Act 2's story. We're at full throttle once we enter Roxxon. You've probably seen Into the Spider-Verse. You know who Prowler is. There's no sense in keeping this secret, so immediately, Aaron takes his mask off and reveals himself to Miles. The question the game raises isn't about Prowler's identity, it's about his moral code. Who is Uncle Aaron really? Where do his allegiances lie? Is this version of him a bad guy, a villain? For now, there's a tenuous balance as he helps Miles break into Roxxon. It's slow and tense, the first time we've properly battled Roxxon's goons. There are plenty of places for enemies to hide, so if we're not careful, a hulking armored soldier can pop out of nowhere and crack our skull. Simon Krieger killed Rick Mason. He didn't just push him into working on a project that made him sick, he locked him down and murdered him. Prowler isn't surprised. It's not that he knew the depths of Simon Krieger's depravity, he just expected it. With Rick's death, the Tinkerer is born.
Ben! Don't look!
Rick's death didn't just twist up Finn, Miles feels it too. Rick was an idol of his, a hero in his own right. He puts that rage to work and drains the Nuform reactor, depowering the facility and denting Roxxon. It puts his bioelectricity first. It places Miles as the best hero for the job in this story. His specific power set, not Peter Parker's gadgets, make him essential to take down Roxxon. When the mission comes to an end, Uncle Aaron tells Miles to use Finn. Lie to her, manipulate her, tell her he wants to join the underground to get close to her. He thinks he's helping, but just like everyone else, he views Miles not as his own hero, but as a sidekick. Prowler Jr. needing mentorship. Maybe that explains why Miles' Prowler suit looks more Prowler than his uncle's. Dear Marvel, I just saw your issue of Marvel's Swimsuit Special 1994. I am a black female late 20s. I want to see Thor nude. The Dan Panosian Tom Smith picture didn't do him justice. In fact, 60% of all Thor pictures don't do him justice. Thor is truly a godsend. Please draw him much more handsome and nude in next year's issue. Thank you. Latra Bledsoe, address withheld by request. This one has nothing to do with Miles, it's just really funny. Next part. When the game launched in 2020, GameSpot's Jordan Ramey wrote, "The way Miles Morales leaps off of rooftops and flips backwards to face the camera before falling into a headfirst dive is just full of the exaggerated swagger of a black teen. It gives me goosebumps every time he does it, especially as the music begins to swell." Regardless of the fact Jordan is a black man, this phrase was memed to death at launch, and rightly so, it's cringy as hell. But the essence of what Jordan's getting at is in the game. Miles is full of the exaggerated swagger of anyone who would enjoy some newfound spider powers. His animations are somehow more fluid than Peter's were, changing the shape of his body to swing upside down while looking behind him, flapping and flailing his arms between swings as he grows into a confident web slinger, automatically backflipping when launching over a rooftop. Considering the fact Miles' team were smaller, building off the blueprint designed in 2018, they embraced the freedom that offered. Time could be dedicated to making Miles look like a unique web swinger, even if he feels identical to Pete. When he swings over to meet with Finn and jumps into civvy clothes, that uniqueness even applies to how Miles moves. Finn hops over rooftops and shimmies up vents with ease because she doesn't need to hide what she can do. Miles hides his identity from her, so he awkwardly clambers over ledges and pretends he gets vertigo.
Here it is, where the plan comes together.
So, your plan. How does Nuform fit in? Krieger's saying you stole a shipment.
I stole one canister. I'm making some adjustments. Don't worry about it. Take today to settle in.
Foolishly and trustingly, Finn agrees to bring Miles into the underground. Their headquarters are at the now condemned Fisk Tower, flashing us back to the opening of the first game with the statues and art pieces laden about the place. The main area that we explore, examining trophies and weapons, even appears to be the security room where Spider-Man 2018's perfect first 10 minutes came to an end. There's a huge mocking picture of Fisk up on the screens, graffiti is all over the walls, and it's here that we realise the underground, under Finn's leadership, has slowly been silencing all of the enemy factions from the last game. Fisk, the demons, even Tombstone's gang have all been dominated by this new upstart. It's impressive. The underground is dangerous, let's get out of here. While thwipping about the city, Miles has every option that Pete does while bringing one little addition. All of my adoration and all of my problems from Spidey 2018 get carried over here. We still can't lengthen or shorten our webs. We'll still release at the end of a swing automatically, regardless of whether or not we've let go of the R2 button. Web zipping is still awkward, meaning Miles can't zip to a wall and immediately transition into a wall run or a fluid leap off. Considering Miles unlocks all of Peter's advanced web swinging after completing his challenges, there's unfortunately not much room for Miles to grow as a swinger when the story progresses, except when it comes to the tricks. They have fixed the tricks. They looked at it, they whacked it with Ratchet's wrench, and they fixed the tricks. In 2018, flipping and spinning force you to waste a skill point. Once you did, you had to jam your thumb into the triangle and circle button, unnecessarily adding extra obstacles between our input and Spidey's turns. Now, and in the remastered edition, it's mapped to the square button, simplifying things. Here, our webhead can do tricks from the get-go, whether it's because speed has been refined or special attention has been spent on this particular trick, backflips no longer slow down our momentum, despite pulling back on the analog stick. If you mess up a trick and spin for too long, Miles will go splat on the tarmac. There still isn't any fall damage, but it's a step in the right direction. Gone are the days of clumsily turning into a superhero landing. If you mess up, the game lets you know you messed up. While it gives us a minute amount of XP still, it also fills up Miles' venom meter, so he's fully charged and ready to go if he decides to swing by a rooftop and start beating up some middle-aged men just minding their own business. This intrinsically and extrinsically incentivizes us to do tricks. It doesn't just look cool, which it does, or embodies the spindly freedom that Miles enjoys when he's in the suit, which it also does, but it also powers up our Venom Jump, the number one thing that differentiates Miles swinging from Pete's. Venom Jump keeps the momentum while increasing height quick fast. It's a combat move and a traversal move, and in the endgame with a fully charged Venom meter, Miles can do this 3 times in a row, rapidly refilled by finding variety in your tricks.
Really feeling like my gaming rig is underpowered right now.
Yeah, Finn's going full supervillain layer here. Are you seeing this giant armor container thing?
Totally not suspicious.
Our next stop is the Gem Theater. It seems the Tinkerer is actually trying to make Nuform unstable so she can blow up Roxxon Plaza. Her plan, as far as she's concerned, is morally righteous. The plaza isn't open yet, so there won't be any civilian casualties with a controlled blast. Ultimately, when you look at Finn's motivation and her plan at this stage of the game, it would be all too easy to see her as a vigilante rather than a straight-up supervillain. She's looked at the signs, she's planned this so that nobody gets hurt. Miles is going up against a villain who intends to commit a terror attack with 0 casualties. But how realistic is that? How different is she from Martin Lee? Finn barges in and in a fury steals the Nuform. The chase is on. Let's talk spectacle. It's something all of Insomniac's Spidey games are masters of. Rhino's Rampage, the Braithwaite Bridge, and this race against Finn are our 3 major web-swinging missions, demanding we be aware of missiles, debris, and the positions of rooftops that might slow us down if we're not careful. While Miles, just like Pete, can run up walls and zip over ledges, maintaining speed is what matters too, and the approach this game has to spectacle chases is a bit different to Spidey 1's. Take Rhino at the start of the game. When Miles interacts with Rhino directly, riding him through a shopping centre, it's clear Insomniac took the criticism levied against the original game and its use of QuickTime events to heart. They didn't change much, but it was a priority that sequences like these were introduced more organically. While QTEs are used in SMMM, they feel much more natural and part of the game world because there's always some form of interaction we have, even if it's just steering Rhino left and right. On the Braithwaite Bridge, we transition seamlessly from cutscene to swinging through the chaos, choosing where we land, webbing up falling cars, using the same inputs and animations that we've associated with web zipping elsewhere. It doesn't feel like a momentary gimmick like, say, running up the crane during Spider-Man 1's construction fight. It feels like we're using tools the game's given us in a new scenario. We are contributing to the spectacle, rather than just along for the ride. Hell, while swinging about in the open world, Miles gets a new web zip transition, giving us a chance to create our own spectacle when flying through Christmas decorations with pizzazz and flair. This chase with Finn has stages, so the sequence brings rising tension. We catch Finn near Central Park and she slams us into a wall before bursting off again. The shipyard provides more challenge because there are less swinging opportunities, so we need to angle ourselves near ships and cranes before finally running up a building and dodging Tinkerer's saw blades. When we chased Shocker in 2018, it felt like a fun, forgettable swing through the city. Hunting down the Tinkerer feels explosive, chaotic, and dangerous. But catching Finn, she whirls into a rage, ready to kill the Spider-Man that's foiled her plans. And Miles throws caution to the winds, breaking Peter Parker's #1 rule.
Give me one good reason not to end you.
My mom would be very upset.
Miles?
He reveals his secret identity. A new layer is stamped to Miles and Finn's relationship because of this. She feels betrayed by her best friend. The tragedy of their relationship gets another bruise, and Miles' openness about his superheroing is one of the ways he defines himself from Peter. Pete's secret identity is one of the most important things in his career. That's not the case with Miles. He has a broader support network, Ganke, his mother, his uncle, and when the story comes to a close, it's all the stronger because Miles and Finn are placed on even pedestals. Both are fueled by grief, both impose expectations on themselves that are difficult to fulfill, both see themselves as saviors of the city. Which brings me to Christmas in New York. Dear Ultimate Marvel, simply amazing. Since I discovered who would be replacing the role of Webhead, I've been saying that this would be the best thing to happen to comics in a long time. I knew it would show the current state of our social convictions while applying the necessary pressure for growth. This is what the golden age of comics was all about, showing real life from a different vantage point. It's very exciting to some people and equally upsetting to others. Either way, something monumental has happened. One day soon, Miles will be in our hearts just as Petey was and still is. He won't be replacing him, but he'll remind us who Peter Parker was at the core. A red-blooded American with a heart of gold. I wish I had 2 more hands so I could give it 4 thumbs up. Great job. A reinvigorated true believer, Chad Tootle. The concept art that you can find online or in Miles Morales' art book shows a New York City that hums and buzzes the same way Spider-Man 1's did. In the day, a cozy glow is cast from apartment buildings and shops. The snow settles gently on the street. If Hollywood is to be believed, Christmas in New York is unlike Christmas anywhere else, bringing warmth alongside the cold. The New York of Marvel's Spider-Man captures that in a heartbeat. But at night, the city is transformed into something colder and harsher. Neon lights up the sky, not segregated to Times Square, but creeping into the residential district of Spanish Harlem. Art director Gavin Golden elaborated in the art book. We used an art principle called Neon Noir, he said. The focus is on a small range of harsh colours displayed in high contrast. It's following the principles of classic black and white noir movies, but with colour. It's very vibrant compared to Marvel's Spider-Man. Neon Noir is visually stunning and blends nicely with the plot's focus on corporate espionage and the seedy conspiracy of Roxxon. Red is their colour, purple is the Underground's. Both are united artistically by the colour wheel while feeling distinct, but where the Underground's presence is ramshackle, moving into Fisk's abandoned real estate and transforming them, Roxxon is stamping the new onto a New York City that frankly doesn't want it. Their gas stations are everywhere, ugly-ass adverts and billboards blare at us when swinging by. The city's beauty doesn't come from the shining neon skyscrapers, it comes from the humanity of Harlem's artistry and culture. Evening evaporates into a shining, dark cityscape, the perfect environment for old Uncle Prowler.
Alright, Miles. Spill it. Give me the whole situation.
Finn, Roxxon, Underground. It's just a lot, you know?
You're 17. You're stressed. And you're a superhero. You gotta cut yourself some slack.
Shaken up after coming to blows with the Tinkerer, Miles goes to see Aaron for advice. Aaron fills the void Peter leaves with his departure to Symkaria, fulfilling the role of mentor and muddying the work of the other Spider-Man. Pete's gone. Miles needs to tackle this problem without the original Spider-Man's help, so he's got to take what he can in the form of advice. Aaron tries to take Miles' mind off crime fighting, inciting the memory of his father, giving him a new project to work on. In the past, before they split up, Aaron and Jeff would use the sounds of the city to make music together, so let's talk about the world. The lighting system, even in the PS4 version, reflects the snow and the glisten of a crispy, cold New York, making it as much of a joy to explore as Spider-Man 2018. The insides of buildings have been redesigned and look less like 2D paint jobs and more like tiny 3D spaces with Christmas decorations adding flavour, though some more variety wouldn't go amiss. The city once again feels alive, with a new fresh energy injected into the people and the graffiti. The people of New York are wrapped up in their winter warmers, and Miles leaves footprints in deep snow. Regardless of the sheet of white over the city, there are some changes here. They've rebranded locations that Adept fans will remember from the first game. Take Mick's Diner, where MJ and Pete would have had their dates. With the passing of Stan Lee, Insomniac introduced a tasteful Easter egg that honestly brought a little tear to my eye when I swung by and noticed it. Clearly, the owner of Mick's Diner has passed on, and outside his restaurant is a bold bronze statue of the legend himself. Billboards have changed with seasonal advertisements. The shops which thugs try to rob are all Christmassy with tiny details like promotional offers. The variety we see in these shops brings a new sense of detail to the active crimes. No longer are we saving the same jewelry store a dozen times. I guess they have Peter Parker on speed dial. Now we have tech stores, clothing stores, to give areas of New York a real sense of uniqueness. Though I don't know why this 24/7 mart is closed. A couple of details are sadly missing. Daily bugles are gone, a small detail that I really loved from the first game. NPCs will still offer handshakes and high fives, they still throw comments our way, like ribbing Miles and telling him he's a cheap knockoff Spider-Man, but they don't run up to us to tell us about crimes or side content anymore. I get why this was cut. Most players aren't going to walk around with 2 feet on the ground, but it was a great way to keep New York personable. Thankfully, the social media feed does return. Miles has taken a leaf out of Peter's book and gone online, even responding to people kind enough to tweet about how he saved them or helped them. New Yorkers are always within reach, even if we're sat on a rooftop. They bicker about the Braithwaite Bridge or argue about Roxxon's presence in New York. Roxxon and Rio Morales' campaign office are locked in a digital war, so we're reminded that there's a political battle accompanying Finn and Miles' super battle with the conglomerate. Everything feels fuller because we can check on the pulse of the city in a second. In fact, I wish this had a couple of mechanical additions, like letting us pick responses for Miles. I would love to troll Roxxon as Spidey. It might have nothing to do with web swinging, but it'd surely add to feeling like Spider-Man, right? Just me? Okay. Because the game is so much shorter than its predecessor, there isn't much of an opportunity for NYC to transform as Miles' adventure continues, but as an extension, his home does evolve. This space once belonged to his abuela, and it acts as an ongoing symbol of Miles finding himself. He and Rio are quite literally living in the shadow of a loved one, struggling to make it their own. J. Jonah Jameson is back in all of his mustachioed glory, but Miles ain't got no time for a boomer like Triple J, so the inclusion of the Danica provides some much needed balance because she's a Spidey fan, while being a consistent character for Jonah to bounce off. In 2016, Danica appeared in the comics with her very own YouTube channel, not a podcast, and it probably helps her out if someone likes and subscribes, hint hint. She discovers that the new Spidey is a person of colour and even dates Ganke for a while. Ganke asks her to call him Ned so she doesn't learn his true identity and connects him to Miles. Isn't that fun? Miles worries about Danica's discovery. Not that she might learn his name, but that she'll broadcast his skin colour. I don't want that, he says. The qualification. In the game, Danica doesn't learn Miles' true identity. In fact, she's one of the only characters who doesn't learn who's under the mask. And there's something of this world about her podcast.
Dana fans, you can join an AMA with candidate Morales on my blog for the next hour. Until next time, remember to set 1 minute per hour aside for deep, meditative breathing.
It's optimistic, it's charming, it's explicitly young millennial courting Generation Z, and her presence further defines Miles from Peter. When Miles first activates the operating system Pete gives him, it automatically switches to Jonah's podcast. Miles wonders if the OG Spidey is a masochist, swinging around the city listening to a man berate and criticize him. Pete's guilt complex is immortalized in a small throwaway comment by Miles, while the new Spider-Man discards it. He's still finding the joy in his great power and listens to Danicast to reinforce how cool it is to be Spider-Man, though it sucks that we still can't play episodes we missed outside of the menu. Of course, New York isn't really the star of the show this time. Harlem is. We've already discussed how important the side missions and friendly neighborhood app are to elevating the liveliness of the city, but much of Miles' story takes place in Spanish Harlem. This is his neighborhood. It's ground zero for Roxxon's takeover of New York. It's where his loved ones live. Graffiti pops, given more prevalence through Miles' budding relationship with the artist Haley, but not every splash of paint comes from her. This piece comes from the artist Kinney Art, who sadly died of cancer, but her work lives on in Miles' world as a tribute. To find inspiration for the various pieces of graffiti that color New York streets, Insomniac brought ideas in from all departments, from political to personal to just decorative, but it often came back to everyday heroes. Madam C.J. Walker, Robert S. Abbott. These are people that I would never have learned about if it wasn't for Miles Morales. I just wish there were ways for me to learn more in universe. They add texture and energy to these streets, but it was the art book that told me about their importance, not the game itself. Taking from Ubisoft's playbook would have helped massively here. In Assassin's Creed, we can access information in detail on various famous figures or architecture, and I would love the chance to do the same with Insomniac's New York. There's tender love and care put into this space, and I often found myself swinging around Miles' district in a daze, just drinking in the Christmas editions, the variety of flags, and the transformed locations. But when I wasn't just enjoying the vibes, I was out on the hunt.
Miles, get ready for your first holographic training challenge. These challenges are spread throughout the city. Each one focuses on a new move or technique.
Around the city, Peter Parker has set up augmented reality challenges to help train Miles while he's in Symkaria. These replace the Taskmaster challenges in the main game or the Screwball challenges in the DLC. Completing a combat challenge unlocks the extended object swing. Completing a traversal challenge unlocks the powerful point launch. It would have been all too easy for Insomniac to use Miles' inexperience as an excuse and have him just need to unlock these basic skills in a skill tree. Instead, they made each one focused and contextual. If you complete all of Pete's challenges, it brings Miles' moveset and abilities up to the same level as an end-game Pete from Spider-Man 1. The challenges themselves can be split into 3 areas: combat, web swinging, and stealth. Stealth especially feels curated. Enemy positions are complex, honest-to-God hostages need to be rescued, and it's all coloured in by Yuri Lowenthal's enthusiasm. But best of all, this all ends with a boss battle against Vulture. Kind of. Swinging over to Empire State University, we get to go toe-to-toe with a hologram of Adrian Toomes while Pete narrates his first battle with the Bird Brain. A cute nod to Spider-Man's comic book origin. It's the perfect Peter Parker pitch. Alliteration. Even if the battle with the Vulture is just a port of the Vulture fight from Spidey 1, the game shakes up the formula a bit by introducing a second Vulture. Oh, so we have to fight 2 bosses at once. It doesn't outstay its welcome, and it's a strong incentive for the player to complete all of Pete's training challenges.
Got the tour Oscorp in 8th grade. Finn was way skeptical. Said that they were gonna destroy New York one day. Devil's breath almost proved her right.
Active crimes, AR challenges, and side missions aren't the only thing you're doing while swinging around. We have 4 collectibles to hunt for this time: time capsules, tech caches, sound samples, and postcards. The tech caches are the most transparent of the collectibles. We click down on the R3 button to see these glowing golden boxes shimmering through walls and need to hunt them down. Again though, it feels like Insomniac took criticisms of the backpack collectibles to heart because sometimes there is challenge here. They hide them in holes in the walls or beneath scaffolding. None of them are true brain teasers, but there's a couple of unique bits of context that add some spice. Like after this underground base, Sagun messes with us by moving mannequins around a room to give us a fright. Finding these, Miles picks up a technology token, some underground tech. I don't know, it's kind of vague as to what these are, but they're necessary to our upgrade currency. Unfortunately, these caches are the only way for us to collect technology tokens. All the other side stuff gives us activity tokens instead. Why bother diluting the currency system if you're still going to keep one of your 2 currencies tied to one specific task? Time capsules replace our backpacks, just placed in more inventive places like on a moving train or on a boat. I don't know if I call them mechanically creative, but there is creativity here. One of them makes us use camouflage to sneak by construction workers. Collecting these gives Miles and Finn's history depth, things they accomplished together, times when they used their smarts, awesome little moments like when they created a secret den in Central Park and experimented with graffiti there. Hey look, Finn invented Big Wheel's costume. This is all as lovely as it was in 2018 when the backpacks sprinkled the essence of Pete and MJ's relationship through our collectathon, but they pale in comparison to the postcards.
Happy birthday, big man. You are my reason for being brave.
I was not ready for that.
Flipping back to the comics, it's interesting how different Insomniac's Jeff is to the Jefferson of the Ultimate Universe. He is complicated on the page. A grieving husband, an overprotective guardian, an ex-SHIELD agent with a dark criminal past. A man who despises superheroes, and eventually when Miles tells him he's Spider-Man, Jeff's response is brutal and emotional. "You killed my brother," he snarls. "Your mother died because of you." This is not the man we get in-game. The postcards are introduced as an endgame mission, a birthday present set for us by Rio but created by Jeff. It's essentially a scavenger hunt across New York, showing us some breathtakingly beautiful locations particularly relevant to Miles' relationship with his father. A lobster restaurant where Jeff would sneak a snack. A gallery where he once took Miles and Finn as kids. They combine to give a full picture of who Jeff was as a father and as a man. In the first game, we saw him in a professional capacity, helping Spidey fight the demons, being scared of public speaking, but Miles' tale ties a bow around his life as a family man. Jefferson's soul isn't just felt in the postcard missions, it's at the forefront of the music collectibles as well. In the run-up to release, Brian Horton teased that Miles' love of music will have pride of place during our exploration of the city, and he's right to be proud of this side activity. Bringing such a prominent part of Miles into gameplay was lovely to see. There's a real level of depth to this one. We don't just click R3 and find something glowing like the others, instead we need to tune in to the sounds of the city and find the right beat for Miles to collect, ultimately adding it to a mix of his own. Hearing Aaron's stories about him and Jeff and the good old days between the two of them is heartwarming and heartbreaking as we learn how the brothers grew apart. We hear of how Jeff turned his back on Aaron's thievery, refusing to bend his personal moral code for family. It gives him a shadow and forces Miles to see his father as human. Collecting all of them lets us see Prowler's villain room and even rewards us with a pretty badass suit. Of course, designed in the colors of the Prowler, as if Aaron fully sees Miles as his own personal protege. I just wish that the final product was better. Don't quit your day job, Miles. Jumping back to the story, Finn agrees to meet. Miles hopes he can talk her down, but she doesn't listen, lost to her vengeance.
Roxxon needs to pay. Not like this.
This is the only way I can beat him. I need you to look the other way. Please.
I can't. I made a promise.
She asks Miles to just look the other way. The two of them don't have to be enemies. She has a plan, but despite wanting to, Miles can't. And as Finn begins to turn on him, an old foe appears. Rhino, the new and improved Rhino, now working for Roxxon. The fight is quick. Miles loses because his user interface fails. He's not the techie Spider-Man like Peter is. He's still too reliant on living up to the expectations Pete set for him, being a Diet Coke version of his mentor. Failure number 3. Dear Mark, after downloading Ultimate Spider-Man 1 to my iPad, long live digital comics, I had to write to say how fantastic the first issue was. As a person of mixed heritage, I'm so happy to see a major comics character representing a growing portion of our American population. While Peter Parker will always be treasured by generations of diverse ethnic backgrounds, Miles can be a personal hero to so many living similar lives. Others around the country and the world can enjoy Miles' stories, but what he can mean to those who truly identify with his life is immense. Ignore all the accusations of Marvel pandering to political correctness. The creation of Miles Morales is a wonderful and important event. Sincerely, Jonathan Barron. Question for you. How do you make invisibility interesting when it comes to stealth? For Miles, his invisibility is an escape mechanism first and an offensive tool second. We can use it to get away and lose enemies, be that in stealth or combat, and it later comes with an upgrade that lets us stun goons when bursting out of it. You can zip down, smack the underground upside the head, and then turn on invisibility to jog around their friends while they panic. It lets us toy with bad guys, something that's always appreciated in a superhero game, because by default we're fighting big dumb dummies who are doing big dumb dummy things. It's all managed by an invisibility gauge that refills over time. There's no standard way for us to fill it up through actions like with the Venom meter, and you need to wait till it's at 100% before you can do anything with it. This ain't like the focus system where you can use the gauge to heal proportional to how much you've generated. The system necessitates waiting to be reliable. In his origin, invisibility is a power that Miles has very little control of. It's a defense mechanism that pops on randomly when he's in trouble. It takes a lot of time before he can confidently activate it whenever he likes, but if Insomniac were to take the page literally, that would mean limiting player control, and who wants that in a Spider-Man game? The issue with invisibility is twofold. The first is, we don't really need to use it. The only time I found invisibility to be helpful was if two enemies were standing next to each other and I wanted to take enemy A out without enemy B spotting me, leaving a short window open to barrel through him for a one-hit kill. But sometimes this works and sometimes it doesn't. Often, I'd use this strategy to pound a goon into the ground and his pal would immediately see me, yell about the fact he sees me, and then boom, combat has begun without me even wanting to start. And the second is we get it too late in an already short game, bursting into Act 2, so there's only a handful of opportunities to use it. Thankfully, when Miles and Finn are kidnapped by Roxxon, we are lathered in those opportunities.
You see, I'm gonna get that mask off you, and then I'm gonna find out what makes you tick. Because you just smell like next level bioengineering. And you know what that smells like to me, kid? That smells like money.
As a villain, Simon Krieger is as threatening as a soggy towel, and just because this is the point of him as a character doesn't mean it's not disappointing. He's not particularly clever, he's not physically intimidating, he's just a weasel who's acquired power through his vast fortune. When the game finally ends, it's hard not to feel that there was an entire cut storyline focusing on Krieger, especially considering Insomniac brought Troy Baker of all people in to voice him. His symbolic presence in the tale matters, his physical presence does not. Let's look at what Krieger does in this story. Prior to the beginning, he kills Rick Mason, a character the player barely knows. He praises Miles for taking down Rhino in our tutorial, and then captures Miles and Tinkerer before they break out. That's it. To use an in-universe comparison, Norman Osborn does more in Spider-Man 2018 than Krieger does here. And Osborn isn't even the main antagonist of the story there. In SMMM, Krieger is. He's a cocky, arrogant, wet little rich boy that we want to take down just because he's a bloody nuisance narratively, if not mechanically. Once the game ends and Miles is shaking off his personal tragedy, we get a brief few-second cutscene of Krieger being arrested, but as far as the player is concerned, they didn't really have a hand in Krieger's downfall. His arrest just happened. Miles and Finn break out of containment, locked in a bunker beneath the city. Finn is cold and distrusting, but eventually the rapport evolves into something endearing, ribbing each other about their power sets. Her smarts define her. She's useless without her toys. We have to work with her to guide her through a room of Roxxon thugs, and this was a serious missed opportunity to provide more stakes to the stealth mechanics. The layout of the map and the sneaky stance that Finn's in makes it appear that if we get caught, she'll get gunned down, but in reality, Miles can drop into the middle of the room, moon some guards, and get into fisticuffs. Despite the misstep here, these stealth sequences speak to how Miles Morales has leveled up when it comes to its level design. Spaces are larger, more vertical and more geometric now. Vast warehouses are gone, now there's pillars, ledges, bunkers to give us a chance to lose enemy sightlines or lose enemies altogether. Take earlier when we broke into Roxxon with Prowler, a huge cylindrical room that goes down, down with numerous levels, walkways and platforms where Roxxon guards lie in wait. There's a greater emphasis on environmental takedowns, and the pathing of guards has been designed around these custom options now. Their patrols will typically take them past a crane or some rubble that can drop on their head. When it comes to level design, stealth feels cultivated rather than slapped on. We are no longer just sitting at the corner of a room able to see everything going on in a flat rectangle ahead of us. Labs have balconies and tiny offices. The underground have retooled Fisk construction sites, except with 3, maybe 4 floors and giant cranes hanging over them for Miles to escape to if things get heated. Ganke has upgraded Miles' operating system so we can tag bad guys now, something really helpful and useful because Roxxon and the underground can hide in every nook and cranny. This would sit snugly into stealth if the game got rid of the safe/not safe system that trivializes a lot of the challenge, but it doesn't. So this, combined with invisibility, combined with a mod that lets us see enemy sightlines, overpowers Miles. Can I just not use the sightlines mod? Yes, and I did, eventually, but I still can't stop the game from telling me which thug is safe and which thug isn't, so I'm still conditioned to participate in join the dot stealth. Mercifully, the structure of underground and Roxxon bases have been tweaked. The enemy waves are gone. You are incentivized to act stealthily because if you can wipe everyone out without being caught, that's it. Base complete. No more goons will be summoned. And in order to make up for this, they litter the base with a higher number of bad guys for us to creep around and take down, upping the challenge. It's just a damn shame that Spider-Man Miles Morales doesn't have a stealth system worthy of its level design.
You see the latest quarterly report?
I don't read that stuff, and I don't know why you do.
I want evidence, in case the new form, makes me sick.
There is an attempt to improve the stealth mechanics of the original, but in reality what this system needs is more complex AI, not an invisibility system with its own skill tree. Yes, this is a hill I'm willing to die on. Miles brings some fun new options to the table, like dropping a webbed up goon so they act like a web bomb, or ceiling takedowns and wall takedowns, making him feel more versatile. But the AI has barely been improved to react to your presence. Guards don't hunt for us, looking at vantage points if they find a pal webbed up. They do, however, shoot at parts of the level where remote mines can be placed once you're discovered, so you can't use this against them later. But the lack of interesting gadgets does weigh against Miles' stealth. Again, he is a digital genius, not an engineering one, so he is gifted all of his toys. Pete gives him the web shooters and the decoys. Prowler gives him the remote mine. The gravity well... Actually, I'm not sure where that comes from. Out of those 4, there is one gadget specific to stealth, the remote mines, which can be shot to circuit boards for an instant takedown, or if you like, you can even toss these straight onto a guard and zap them where they stand. We seem to be expected to use the decoys to distract enemies, but that hardly works, because as soon as you chuck down a decoy, all of the enemies enter one state of alert, meaning you can't organize stealth takedowns, even though they don't know where we are. As soon as a goon has that little red exclamation mark pop above their head, the game state changes, tossing us into combat mode. It doesn't matter where Miles is or what he's up to, or the fact that not one single enemy knows where he's at, enemies will start blasting at you unless you go invisible.
You agreed to leave the kid alone.
Uncle Aaron?
Ah, the kid. I love how you say that. It's just so paternal.
Uncle Aaron ratted us out to Roxxon. He's the reason Krieger could kidnap us. Prowler genuinely believes everything he's doing is for Miles' own good, and it's inferred that he only sold out Tinkerer because he saw the pressure it was putting on Spider-Man. In his own messed up way, he was just looking out for his nephew. Miles clings to that, refusing to believe that Aaron would have genuinely betrayed him. He's still young, still inexperienced, still naive. The final arena that Finn and Miles need to navigate is legitimately fantastic. All of the previous issues with stealth are still here, but being able to utilize Finn's hacking skills to turn some of Roxxon's machinery against the goons is engaging and new. The fact that Miles provides numerous options to clear out this space really makes it feel like one of the pinnacle moments of the game when facing henchmen. But it's also here at the story's 75% mark that we get a stealth-specific Roxxon enemy type. When it comes to sneaking, 2 new enemies rear their ugly heads specific to each faction. The underground gets leapers that can, with ease, launch themselves up to walkways or accidentally land next to your hidey hole. They rock, meaning Miles needs to constantly be moving to keep out of their way. The introduction of the Roxxon guards, with heat vision that exposes Miles' invisibility, is an interesting idea for an enemy type, but they were introduced much too late to act as a consistent threat. Outside of this room, we will never see these enemies again. We're constantly encouraged to distract thugs using our web shooters through their placement in levels, but as a system this has not been refined. It's confusing how far away you need to shoot a web for an enemy to notice it. Honestly, this seems to change henchman to henchman, and often I found myself frustratingly rollicking my webs at the ground to distract an enemy, just for every bad guy on the map to poop their pants and level their guns at me. All of the advancements that were made with the screwball stealth missions in the city that never sleeps have been forgotten about or willfully ignored. There are no motion sensors, no moments outside of Pete's 3 stealth missions where there are hostages. As adorable as it is to save holographic Spider-Men from holographic goons, I would kill for some stealth stuff that have real stakes with real hostages. Stuff like this should have been incorporated into the dynamism of the active crimes. An active crime where someone's being held hostage and we have to stealthily rescue them would have been a real breath of fresh air. And they'd also make stealth feel more inclusive in the game world, rather than segregated to particular moments.
All the current new firm project data's on here. Toxicity reports, failed safety reviews, and Krieger's name's on everything. This would destroy Roxxon.
You like my new color? Immune to your little zappy pops.
Zappy Pops? Come on, man.
A lengthy report teaches us more about the dangers of Nuform. It gives Finn an out. She doesn't need to commit to her destructive plan. We can use this to expose Krieger, but it all comes just too late. It's time for Rhino 2.0. The gimmick for this boss fight is that Rhino's undergone a serious upgrade. We can no longer just Venom Punch him to knock him down, and his intermittent rampages leave red energy fields which can deal heavy damage and deactivate our powers. Goons flood the room, but they're not our focus and easily ignored. They're there for Finn to tackle, meaning it feels like she's contributing to the fight. Battling Rhino in this hexagonal room with a low ceiling makes us feel trapped in here with him. Finn keeps yelling at Spidey, encouraging him to kill Rhino, screaming that she's gonna do it herself. In a future game, when we end up working alongside a villain again, I would love for Insomniac to include the possibility during a mission that whatever frenemy we're working with could kill the bad guys and we need to keep intervening while knocking them out. It would have been a great mechanic to bring to a certain black suit Spider-Man, but we'll talk about missed sequel opportunities another time. To be honest, all of Miles' bosses are humongous levels up. Each one stands as more engaging and full of unique intricacies. It's just a damn shame that when all is said and done, we only really fight 3 of them. I'm sure I'm not the only one who is a little bit disappointed when I put the game down and realized that Miles Morales only introduces 2 new villains to Insomniac's world, the Tinkerer and Prowler. While Rhino's battle has been completely rejigged to make him feel separate from the 2018 iteration, we fight him twice in the game, and variety after all is the spice of life. When the dust settles, Miles foolishly leaves an enraged Finn alone with Rhino and swings back to download Krieger's data. Simon has updated the reactor, so if Finn does blow it up, it'll take all of Harlem with it. This is no longer a zero-casualty plan. But Finn doesn't listen.
You screwed up the bridge! Destroyed my lab! Got me kidnapped!
Finn! Finn, the reactor!
Come near me again. I'll kill you.
I do not care for this scene. So much of the pacing seems to be careful up until this point, cautiously walking that ever so tricky beam between a high-octane story that never lets up and giving its characters room to breathe. Finn snapping and trying to kill Rhino makes complete sense, but her tantrum in the subway tunnel afterwards where she beats the shit out of her childhood friend and then tells him she'll kill him doesn't feel earned at all. I think it's how violent her reaction is. A first-person perspective shows us her rage, her bloodthirst, but the heartache is missing because of how it's been paced. In an interview with esports.net, Finn's actor Jasmine Savoy Brown talked about that heartache in a way that shows great intentions but unravels the clumsiness of this particular scene. Quote, "The story is all about love of family. Miles and Rio, their love literally is blood. Miles and Finn, they're not blood, but they are family. Those stories always resonate with us as people because love is the most important thing. So this intense juxtaposition, at least for me, has heartache. Intense juxtaposition, vengeance versus love. She expects Miles to be there for her no matter her choices. That angle is powerful, running alongside how Jefferson treated Aaron, but I don't think the narrative earns her brutality. In a longer game, even 2 hours longer, I think Insomniac would have given themselves more time to let her descent breathe. To compare it to Otto Octavius, we see him be beaten down at numerous points. It's a gradual, slow burn. And while Finn didn't need her spiral into villainy to be that slow, it would have been nice if the game put the brakes on a couple more times to really let us see that she is capable of being callous and cruel in her pain. Because of the visual storytelling later, it still roused something in me when the credits rolled, but as she leaves Miles gasping for air in the subway tunnel, I struggle to empathize or care because of what she did to him.
We're family.
My family's dead.
As a young Hispanic male who grew up reading comics, I always related to Peter Parker the most, despite the idea that he was a white kid from Queens. But I always imagined a day when I could be the kid under the mask. And now, today's generation of young readers will get to live in a world where anyone can be Spider-Man. This is when the House of Ideas really does live up to its name. Thank you for that, and all that you do. Sincerely, Elliot Ruben Serrano. Our closing hour begins with a shock for Rio Morales.
Why didn't you tell me about any of this? All those talks we had? How to keep yourself safe?
Her husband was murdered by Martin Lee and now her son spends his nights battling people like him. Her first reaction is to simply ask, why didn't you tell me about this? And the way this shot in particular is framed, with Jeff's flag on the mantelpiece behind them, reminds us that she has married a man who died saving people. She has painted a target on her back through her campaign, and it is an inevitability that Miles would follow in the footsteps of his parents. Seeing Miles like this, in the suit, her expectations of her son change. He's not just the bright kid that she loves and cares for. She's beginning to see him as a Spider-Man. We define Miles further from Peter. Miles uses his support network as Spidey. Peter keeps his secrets, and Rio is now directly involved in the supervillain plot. Finn is going to blow the reactor, and Rio is going to put herself in the firing line to try and evacuate Harlem. But Miles' family troubles aren't over, and it's high time we shatter some more expectations. Uncle Aaron misunderstood the assignment. He spent the game trying to mentor Miles, teach him the importance of looking out for number one, of conning his way out of his problems, and through it all, he hasn't realized the true enemy here, Roxxon. Aaron hasn't taken Jeff's death well. He's fallen into an overprotective figure, desperate to keep his nephew safe, no matter the cost. He is terrified that Miles is on a road which can only lead to one of two destinations. Either he dies as Spider-Man, or ends up hating his uncle, just like Jeff did.
You want it back in the family, and that's the best you could do?
I saved your life.
You threw me in a cell!
To protect you!
Like this is protecting me?
Damn it, Miles! I'm not gonna lose you too!
Miles rejects all of the lessons he's tried to teach him, refusing to let Aaron mold him into Prowler 2.0. Deep down, it's clear that this is what Aaron expected of his nephew, and in a heartbreaking surge of strength, Miles prepares for a fight. He's got a city to save. Prowler's moveset borrows abilities from Miles. He can turn invisible, he can activate decoys, he can swing around the wide open space and blast projectiles at us. The way he's been crafted as an enemy really makes him feel like Spidey's battling a dark version of himself. It's brutal and terrific. It's the first time that I wished we had challenge maps to battle these bosses again, because trying to outwit Prowler in his lair is easily one of the highlights of the whole series. In another Spider-Man story, this would and could have been our final boss. If Finn had just waited and not overreacted, and if Prowler had been written with less likability and less of a conscience, this could have been the end of Miles' story. Aaron goes down and we enter the endgame. Time to take down Tinkerer, but first, a flashback to put a button on who the pair once were and where they've ended up.
Would you look at that? Genuine award-winning scientists.
No one told us we were in the special exhibit. Ticket only.
How'd you get in?
I bought a ticket. How'd you get in?
Not important.
Finn's plan to use the energy converter her and Miles built as kids ties nicely to the time capsules. Just like how Spidey 2018 rewarded your engagement with the side content and how it ties to the core story, hello research stations, so too does our collectathon bring Miles and Finn's story full circle. The depth and breadth of Easter eggs and links to the previous game is enough to put a smile on any player's face, but what the Oscorp Science Center mainly does is make Insomniac's universe holistic. We hear Jeff's voice again over the phone to remind us why Miles wants to be a hero, why he wears the mask. Seeing Pete and Otto together as friends and colleagues, having a wee nosy at the memory metal, is touching and searing with the knowledge of what becomes of them. And it also introduces the first of the climax's more obvious parallels. Miles and Finn are about to end up just like Pete and Otto. Everything ends in Harlem. Finn blasts off to Roxxon Plaza, prepared to detonate the reactor. We battle through the streets to reach her, working with our allies and loved ones. Earlier in the game, Miles tells Pete that he uncovered a local conspiracy and Pete laughs. Classic! But there's nothing classic about this. Miles is doing things his own way, unlike Pete. He's relying on his people. Ganke keeps us posted on Harlemites' whereabouts. We caution shopkeepers and tell them to stay safe. War has broken out between the Underground and Roxxon with high-powered weaponry. The game organically ups the stakes through this being our first story mission where we need to fight both forces at once. A storm rages as we find our way through the fog and gloom, relying on our Spidey sense for surprise attacks. Both of these groups are united in a single belief, that these people are disposable. A neighborhood under attack needs a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man to save them.
I don't want to fight! We'll talk! After I disable the reactor.
The Tinkerer isn't just Finn's final form, it's the final evolution of Insomniac boss battles so far. Just like with Prowler, she's fast, a natural mesh of all the underground enemies the Webhead has come up against, meaning we need to hone in on all the skills we've developed through fighting her lackeys. But what really makes this fight so great is the setting. In her first phase, she's bathed in angry red neon lights, her rage made manifest in connecting her to Roxxon. The second phase, as she just begins to listen to Miles, involves an open space where her walls have literally broken down. The third and final phase, of course, ends with the two of them duking it out over a bright holographic map of Manhattan, the fate of the city literally resting on the outcome of this battle. Tinkerer has a whole variety of moves which shift with each phase, developing new weapons on the fly using her memory metal, throwing spiked wheels at us that we need to dodge, and of course, her huge imposing sword dramatically presents her as a threat. But despite mirroring Spider-Man 1, despite the friends become enemies archetype returning, Finn Mason isn't Otto Octavius. Where Otto had completely transitioned to Octopus by the final battle, Finn is still in there. The Tinkerer remains a mask she wears. She still thinks she's doing all of this for the greater good. Otto claimed he did, but his arrogance malformed his belief. When Finn is beaten, Miles summons his courage and makes up for all three of his past failures. At the start of the game, he was too brash and cocky, not understanding the seriousness of the mask. As he crawls toward the reactor and prepares to sacrifice himself to save Harlem, there's no brashness, no cockiness. He firmly understands what he's about to do. Later, he blew up the Braithwaite Bridge, not understanding how to control his powers. As he absorbs the lethal energy from the reactor, he musters all of his focus and self-control to do it without hurting anyone else. When he was ambushed and taken down by Rhino, he lost that fight because he relied too much on the tech that Pete gave him. He tried to do things the Peter Parker way. He tried to live up to Pete's expectations of him. As he charges toward the reactor, he rips the mask in the operating system off so he can see clearly, rely on his instincts and his bioelectricity. Finn separates from the parallel to Otto by doing the right thing in the end. Miles has absorbed too much energy, he's going to explode, but she grabs him and takes him into the sky to safety. Despite their differences, despite Finn's single-minded vengeance, both are the saviors of Harlem. Golden light bathes them as they look down on the district. Miles finally makes a hero sacrifice. Spider saves the day, but Miles loses Finn, and his people return the favor.
Who is he?
That guy? He's our Spider-Man.
In the Ultimate Spider-Man comics, Miles becomes Spider-Man to honor Peter Parker's memory following his death. They never met, but 2 years on from Pete's passing, Aunt May hosts a celebration of her nephew's life. Some of the X-Men come, Gwen Stacy and MJ are here. Tony Stark sends food. In the quiet hours of the evening, a small group sit in a circle and talk about what they imagine Pete's life would have been like. May wonders if he would have left the caution behind and become a scientist. Mary Jane Watson imagines he would become the leader of the Avengers. But Miles' response speaks volumes. I can't help but wonder if Peter was still alive and I ended up getting my stuff together like I have now, would we end up being like a team? He wonders. Would we be partners, or would I be like his sidekick in training under him? Would I be his intern? Would I have a different kind of superhero name? There couldn't be two Spider-Men. Would I even have a superhero name? Would I need one? Would he be angry at me for trying to step up into his franchise without permission? Would he hate me? I think we would have been good friends, unless, I don't know, he hated me. The journey of Miles Morales in this game runs alongside the journey of Insomniac's Spider-Universe. He wants to become his own thing, not just a copy of what came before. Not just another footnote in Spider-Man's history. It was important that this game be good. Miles is now part of the zeitgeist because of the energy and power his stories have brought to the Spider-Man mythos. Whether that's with Brian Michael Bendis or Javier Garron or Phil Lord and Chris Miller. Miles Morales matters to people, so it mattered that Insomniac sparked our fingertips and shocked us into feeling like him. With great power comes great expectations.
Go time? Go time.
This game, like Miles, shatters them.
You want it when you want it. It's only when it's right for you. I just got this feeling that I'm meant to date. I just got this feeling you gon' take and leave. I just got this feeling you don't say what you mean. I just hate this feeling, but I can't fight this feeling. I can't fight this feeling no more. Call it how it is. Why you keep on making a fool of me? You know all the spies that make my walls drop. Turning me on, then you go and let me down. You know that I want it, but I can feel your vibe. You keep pulling, pushing on me. All this time I sacrifice, but you want it when you want it. It's only when it's right for you. I just got this feeling that I'm meant to date. I just got this feeling you gon' take and leave. I just got this feeling you don't say what you mean. I just hate this feeling, but I can't fight this feeling. I can't fight